So, good morning and good afternoon, wherever you're located. I'm very excited to be here today. I am running on very few hours of sleep due to a delayed flight. So, I am excited to be here. No coffee yet, but we're going to make this work, and I'm super excited to talk to you. So, quick introduction. I'm Kelly. I am a director of engineering at Spot AI, as you just heard, video intelligence startup. I've been in engineering leadership for over 8 years at this point, in engineering for much longer than that. And I am very, very passionate about all things engineering leadership. This is not just getting engineers into engineering management, but also teaching ICs or EMs how to really level up their leadership skills to be really impactful within their organization, which is what's really inspiring this talk today, Influence Without Authority. A couple other things. I'm co-host of a little podcast called Ladybug Podcast. We just announced that we are bringing back season 7. I'm flying out to Sweden to record that season, all on engineering leadership. So very, very excited. Stay tuned for that. And I also have a newsletter called Lessons in Engineering Leadership, where you can find that at engleadership.xyz. You'll find all these links at the very last slide, so you don't need to remember or write them down right now. All right, so let's dig in here. So first things first, influence does not have anything to do with your job title. And I say that because, there's certainly a power dynamic. If you have a manager in your title, there's going to be a level of respect that comes with that. But there's so many ways that you can be building your influence and building the respect within your organization, whether you're an individual contributor or a manager. You're seeing a lot more companies these days really build a track for engineering or for being an individual contributor without having to actually move into management and still continue to level up within an organization. And one of the biggest things I see in my career working with my engineers and working with, other engineers through mentorship and so on, is one of the big things that makes them stand out and help level up within their organization is how they're building influence within that organization. So when I say here, influence is what makes you a leader, not your job title, I very, very much mean that. So what you're going to see here, I'm going to go through 4 key skills. I'm going to define those skills, and I'm going to give you some actions where you can actually apply this in your everyday. So let's dive right in. First one, leaders know how to think about the bigger picture. What I mean by this is, the bigger picture is how does your work actually impact your organization? What is the business value that your work is bringing? This is not necessarily just like, I'm getting my work done, but how are customers actually interacting with the work you're doing? How, if you're working on something internally, if you're more on the like internal developer tools side of things, how is your team benefiting from working within, the work that you're doing here? So I like stressing this one because this is not something that you necessarily have to be working on this grand project to be making a difference here. And I'll dig into that through an example in a moment, but really, really dive in here on the business impact. Just ask, like, what is the purpose of the work that I'm doing here? So as we think through this bigger picture, the first action I want you to take away is understand and verbalizing the impact of your work within your organization. When you're at a startup, this is pretty easy to measure because we tend to have a lot more things on our plate than, say, you're at a larger organization. But you can still really measure the impact of your work within your organization, even if you're working on something small. Take working at Meta, for example. Let's say you're working on Facebook and you're assigned to the like button. Sure, it is like this one little thing. I guess it's now various buttons. It goes to show how much I use Facebook these days. But this button, sure, it's just a little button on a website that you see again and again and again and again. But think about how many times people are actually interacting with that button. Think about how many times people are expressing their emotions and their mood and their happiness and their anger and their sorrow, whatever it happens to be, within this little section of a website. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be changing the world to know how your work is impacting the organization. The second action I'd recommend you take here is building context by asking several questions. Talk to your boss, talk to your skips, talk to your peers, talk to others within the organization and just say, "Hey, I want to know how you're like what you're working on and how my work can help you." Just have these conversations, build these relationships. You've probably heard this time and time again. No question is dumb. Just ask the question. Try to figure out, whatever. If you don't have the answer, you're never going to get the answer unless you actually ask that question. So keep on digging into the why and ask, as you're working with your manager, for example, you're looking at the vision for the organization and you want to know what's on the roadmap. You want to know why these particular things have been chosen to actually be on the roadmap. So just keep on asking that why, that why, that why. And that's really going to help you understand your bigger picture and your impact to your organization. Next one here, leaders encourage and amplify others on their team. This is one of my favorites because this is something that really builds the culture within your organization and within your team. So, when I'm talking about encouraging and amplifying others, I'm talking about not just celebrating wins and saying, hey, this person did something really great, but I'm also talking about helping your team helping your direct peers or helping those outside of your team. This could be in the form of actually like pairing with them and helping them solve something, but it could also be just providing that voice to somebody who may or may not feel comfortable doing so. So let's just dive right into the actions here because this is really going to come through here. So, first one, act as a representative for your team. What this means is, comfortable talking about tough topics. When you're going through some major change within the organization, say your organization is going through layoffs or you're pivoting to a totally different direction and whatever you're working on is going to be scrapped and you're really disappointed about that and your team is really disappointed about that. Your team might not feel comfortable actually voicing that concern. There are people in the organization who feel much more comfortable bringing up concerns, issues, and having those critical conversations. And this is one way that you can really stand out within your organization by being that voice and acting as that representative. When we were going through a change in leadership at our company, it was very much the same thing. I had one particular engineer who basically acted as, he collected the information or the thoughts and concerns from others within the organization and brought those to me. So we can have that conversation one on one, but I can then address the entire team as a whole and talk through these concerns and these questions with them all together. The second one here is ensuring everyone's contributions are being recognized. So this is very much the whole it's a team effort. We're all working towards the same broader goal. We're all working towards the same projects, the same business goals. And it's really easy to make something that you're super proud of. And then we just kind of like go right on by, like, great, thanks. Let's work on this next task. But it's something you're really proud of. And it can hurt when you've built something and you want to shout it from the rooftops, especially in engineering, because a lot of the work that we do tends to go unnoticed because it's you know, uh, it just is. It's something I've experienced for a long time. And so one thing I highly encourage you to do is celebrate the wins of your other team members. So in this case, think about this. If I were to post on Slack, for example, something that Julie did, I'm super like she's super proud of it, and I think everyone needs to know about it. So I might write, Julie didn't just solve this support ticket. She figured out a way to make it so if this comes up again, we can very easily, repeat this process and not have to spend more and more and more time kind of going back to the drawing board to fix this. So it's been clearly documented and it's going to be super easy to follow these four steps to complete this task again next time it comes up. When you celebrate somebody else's wins, it makes them feel really, really good. And you're building that respect within your organization by, celebrating somebody else that's not yourself too. So, next one here is leaders understand their personal strengths and work to improve their weaknesses. This one is an everlasting journey. It's something you're always going to be working on for a very long time. So when I'm talking about your personal strengths and weaknesses, I'm talking about, knowing exactly where your skills lie. Where are you most contributing to your organization? For me, people and process is very much my strength. That's why, you can give me a project and I will get it right back on the rails and everything's going to be great. But you also need to know where your weaknesses lie. I am not going to be the best person to have very technical conversations these days because I am not in the code anymore. I can review a pull request and I can pair with somebody and I can make some suggestions, but I'm not going to be able to really deeply drive that technical conversation, and that's totally fine because others on your team will be able to do that. And that's what I'm really talking about here. You understand your personal strengths, but you should also understand what value your team is bringing in here as well. This growth is an ongoing journey. As you're moving within an organization and you're learning, your skills are going to change as well. So, as I just said here, identify not just your own strengths, but also the strengths of your team. Know where your team is strongest. Think about if you're going to some individual on a team to help fix a particular problem or get you unblocked, you're going to know this particular individual is the best person to go to for this reason. But think about this as yourself too. Look at your past performance reviews. Ask your manager or ask your peers for their feedback. Where do you think that I add value to the organization, or where do you think that I can, continue to build my skills? Your manager should definitely be directing this conversation, so hopefully they are actively doing that. So start with yourself. Think about yourself, about what do you bring to an organization, and then think beyond yourself. Think about your team's unique skills, think about where you can help them level up as well. And remember, sharing is caring. We're all going to move together to build this organization and build this product, and whatever it is you're working on, if we're all working towards that same mission, we're all growing along the way. The second point here, ask for and act on feedback. I can do an entire talk just on feedback because it's one of those things where a lot of people are not naturals at giving or receiving feedback. It is something that you need to learn how to do. And so this is something that I ask you to just get comfortable with feedback in the first place. Get comfortable with asking for feedback, get comfortable with giving feedback, and get comfortable with getting feedback on your feedback as well. It's a little meta, but it's necessary that you continue to learn how to give and receive better feedback. So, one thing that's really important to stress here is, as I said, a lot of people are not good at giving feedback. And it's important for you to know what you should act on and what you should just kind of brush off, because sometimes you're going to get really bad feedback, whether it's not timely, it's not specific, it's not relevant. And you need to let that part go. It can be tough at times, especially when it feels like somebody's actively attacking you instead of, helping you grow for some reason. But something that you do need to build as a skill. So, an example of this, if I'm saying, "Hey, can you give me feedback on at this talk today?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, you're great at giving presentations." I'm like, "Cool. That's not helpful. I can't do anything with that." But if you say you provide really great examples that help me contextualize what you're talking about, that gives me something else to work with. And you might say, hey, it's much easier for people to actually hear what you're saying if you unmute your microphone at the very beginning. Little things that we will learn and grow from next time. All right. Let's dig in on the last topic here. I'm going to spend a pretty significant amount of time on emotional intelligence because this is a very, very important topic. So, emotional intelligence refers to the ability to be able to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions, as well as be able to take on these actions and influence the emotions of others. In leadership, this looks like building and maintaining a strong, effective team. This is understanding what your team is going through, how you can help your team, and how you can help them cope with certain situations, but also how you cope with those situations as well. When you have a high IQ, or high EQ rather, it leads to lower stress, it leads to better handling of issues that may arise, and it also continues to build that trust within your team. Again, this is one of those things that you don't necessarily have to be in management to have an impact on your team. Some of the engineers on my team who are making the biggest impacts, they just have really, really high EQ, and they can really help in these stressful situations, bring some context to kind of lessen that load and help others kind of work through whatever it is that we're working through as a team. So, the first point here I wanted you to take away is to be able to recognize your emotions, be able to name them, and be able to act accordingly on them. So, first off, practice self awareness. Regularly check in with your emotions, really understand how am I feeling right now and why am I feeling that way. On any given day, you're going to feel a wide variety of emotions. So, that's to be expected because we are all human. The goal here is to really understand how you're feeling, to be in tune with how you're feeling. The second point here is to improve self regulation. What this means is we've all been in situations where we get really, really heated in the moment and, we're really stressed. We're starting to get into an argument with somebody. And this is where self regulation really comes into play. If you can utilize techniques like, think mindfulness, like deep breathing exercises, meditation, or just like simply taking that step back, you're going to be able to help reduce that feeling of overwhelm and have a much more clear conversation with somebody. And lastly, develop empathy. So, what this looks like is trying to see things from others' perspectives. Listen actively. And I'm going to talk about listening in a moment here again. Validate their concerns, validate how they're feeling. You might not agree necessarily with how they're feeling for whatever given reason, but you still need to validate their emotions and help, have that conversation with them. You're also going to be building stronger relationships in this case as well. So, the second one here is to focus on both verbal and nonverbal communication skills. If you've ever been into a meeting where somebody is angry and their video is on or you're face to face and you can just see it in their face, you're like, oh, maybe they're not really happy right now, or somebody like rolls their eyes. It can feel really bad. So the purpose here for the nonverbal side of things is like be really in tune with how you're reacting in a meeting and know when it's time to show that emotion and when it's not the appropriate time to show that emotion. The second thing around here is improving your communication skills. Learn to express very clearly your needs and wants and concerns in a way that's not going to infringe on the right of others. Be clear, be expressive with your communication, and really practice having a conversation and truly listening to what somebody is saying and not just waiting for your turn to respond. You're again you're building that relationship with this individual and really building your influence in this process. Final point here, building influence is a long game. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is something that's going to take time. It's going to take feedback. You're going to go through many ups and downs of how you feel within your organization. As people come in and out of the organization, you're going to have to build relationships and build trust and build that influence with them. And same if you move to a new company, you're going to have to start building that respect and building that influence again. But these skills are something that you can apply now to wherever you are within the organization, whether you are an individual contributor or you are an engineering manager, and really help to build that influence within your organization. So some quick notes here. You can find me on Twitter at KVLLY. Yes, it is still Twitter. LinkedIn is just my first and last name. You can find my newsletter at engleadership.xyz. I also have a course on building influence. That's a 3-day course, so it's a much more in depth here. That's course.engleadership.xyz. It takes you to the Maven website. And lastly, you can hear more about the Ladybug podcast at ladybug.dev. We've got 6 seasons of fantastic content for you to listen to. Thank you so much.
Hey, Kelly,
Hey.
amazing talk.
Thank you.
I really like that encouraging and celebrating the wins of others. Very cool.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have a few questions from the audience here for you today. So our first question is, what advice would you give to someone who is new to an organization and looking to build influence from the ground up?
That is a fantastic question. The first thing you should do in any organization, influence or not, your first 30 days is to learn and meet as many people as possible. Start building those relationships, understand who you're working with, understand who your work is impacting as well, and start to build those cross-functional relationships too. Look outside just your main team and have those conversations with others outside as well. This is the easiest way for you to understand, where people are currently in the organization, how they feel about their job, how they feel about their company in general and their work, and where you can start to find your way to make that impact. You don't want to kind of just like go in hot and try to figure out how you could immediately resolve people's issues. Just listen and learn.
Absolutely. I love that. Like, get in learning mode when you're first hired on.
Oh
That's
yeah.
excellent. All right. So next question. Um, how can individuals effectively handle resistance or pushback when trying to influence change?
First question is why. Why are you getting that pushback? Why are you getting that resistance? Understand why you're trying to make a change as well. And this is part of the
Okay.
communication piece. Really know what business impact a change is going to have. There's always going to be a trade-off in everything that you do. And so one of the best ways you can get over that pushback is to be able to very clearly explain what's happening. Now I will caveat this with sometimes we suggest things that's not actually going to be a good idea, and that's also totally fine. That is one of those things that you also need to be comfortable with saying, okay, maybe this wasn't the best suggestion. Let's move on. But other times, you're not going to make everybody happy. You're not going to have every single person on board. And that needs to be something you need to be comfortable with as well.
Amazing. Absolutely. All right. So another question we have here. What role does networking outside of one's immediate team or department play in building influence?
We often hear when we're applying for a job, it's who you know. It's getting a referral to get into an organization. When you're at a company, it's the same thing. It is who you know.
Yeah.
So this is the really important role of networking outside of your team, where you can say, "Hey, I know all these people. I created connections with all these people outside of my direct team." And it helps you know what they're working on. It helps you celebrate their wins. It helps you really know how your work impacts their work as well. If it does, maybe it doesn't. My work doesn't necessarily impact, you know, my work definitely impacts engineering. Work is actually very unique because it impacts sales, it impacts support, it impacts success, it impacts everybody else at the organization. So you can just say, "Hey, I want to talk because I know my work impacts yours."
Absolutely. That's been my experience as well. It usually touches a little bit of everybody,
Oh
for,
yeah.
for better or for worse, right?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. All right, let's do just a couple more questions here, Kelly. There are a ton coming in. Unfortunately, we cannot address them all, but let's do two more. So, do you feel that you always need to get things 100% right as a lead?
Absolutely not. I definitely do not get things 100% right, and I consider myself to be a really great leader within my organization. This is one of those things that's really important to be comfortable with not getting it right all the time and knowing what to do when you don't get it right. I've made some decisions around changes that we've made that maybe were rushed and they didn't actually play out as I thought they would. And we have a conversation about that. I'm like, okay, didn't do this great. Sorry for the disruption. Let's get back to what we were doing before, or, whatever it happens to be. So yeah, you do not need to get things 100% right. And frankly, you're going to learn more from your mistakes than you are from being able to get everything right all the time.
Awesome. Love that. And just being transparent with it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I've actually got word from the man in the microphone here. We can go with a few more questions. So
Okay.
we're gonna keep rolling here. So asking a lot of questions can be annoying and lead to people withdrawing from conversation. How should you make it more palatable to them?
Set the stage with saying, "Hey, I'd love to set some time aside to ask you about X. Ask you about this conversation, ask you about this project, this vision for our company." Whatever it happens to be. Set the stage saying, "I want to have this conversation," so they go in being prepared for questions. The other thing you can do to be prepared for questions, unlike this Q&A where I don't know what's going to be asked, is say, hey, I want to talk about these things with you. Can we set aside 15, 20 minutes to just go through my questions? And it gives them an opportunity to not feel like they're just going to be like, I don't know what I'm going to be asked. What am I actually going to answer? Should I prepare for this? I've doing enough Q&A to be comfortable with the questions on the fly, so I don't mind it, obviously. But a lot of people are very uncomfortable with this, and that does lead to people withdrawing from that conversation. So prepare them as much as you can.
So, just a quick follow-up question to that, because in my experience, like if you try to prep somebody a little bit with like, "Hey, we need to talk later," or "I've got some questions for you," there's kind of like that little bit of a awkwardness or
Oh
edginess.
yeah.
Like, what is it going to be? Am I in trouble?
Am I in
You know?
trouble? No, absolutely. Like, if you're a manager, never send a message to one of your engineers just saying, "Can we talk?" and send them a link. Or don't put a meeting on their calendar and just say, "Quick sync." Like, tell them, "Hey, I'm putting some time on your calendar for this reason."
Be specific. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. What is more important for career advancement, technical skills or social skills?
That's a great question. It's going to depend on how you want to advance in your career. And the reason I say that is I think it's a little bit of both. I, as director of engineering at Spot, I don't code these days. I've been at the company for a little over 2 years now, and I've opened one pull request to rename Office 365 to Microsoft 365. And so the technical skills piece of it is less important of where I'm at right now within the organization. However, I need to be very good at having system design conversations and being able to have these conversations with my engineering teams to say, hey, let's think through this. I'm not going to have all of the technical answers, but I will tell you who you need to talk to get that clarity. But that is also where you start to build those social skills as well, is knowing where you provide that impact. And especially on the management track, social skills are fantastic. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I have 3 degrees from the University of Georgia, go Dogs, one of which is a master's in social work. So I'm a trained therapist, hence why I talk
Sounds
about
very
leadership a lot.
helpful. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, University of Georgia. Okay.
That's right.
I'm not going to go down that track because I'm not too far from you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in Alabama.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So, next question. Good feedback is about highlighting negative qualities too. How to help teammates without alienating them.
I have a newsletter that I can share. If you reach out to me on Twitter and just send me a message, I needed to hunt down the link, which is why I can't just say it here. All on giving feedback that talks about this in detail. And the reason why I'm starting with that is because it's a long answer. But to give you like a very, 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 very short version of it, it's, I, when you want to give somebody critical feedback, which is necessary, it needs to be specific, it needs to be timely, it needs to be reasonable, and it needs to be about an action and not about a person. So you can't say, you're really bad at your job because that doesn't help me with anything. Or you can't say, hey, that presentation you gave 6 months ago could use some work. I'm like, okay, I don't remember what I had for dinner yesterday. So not helpful. So just start with those 4 points. Be timely, be specific, be about the action and not the person, and be reasonable.
Excellent. I love that. I love that. The timely, I don't think about that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so how should you deal with leaders who take credit for other people's work? So that's question number one.
I'm going to actually combine them into two, so you can read the second
Yeah.
one as well.
Okay, sure. So I've been building design system libraries from our organization. 90% of my work is not recognized. How can I make it out?
The biggest thing you can take away from this is you have to be your own advocate. It can be very frustrating when others are taking credit for your work, and it's something you often see in managers who don't have as much experience in management or leadership. They're like, well, my team is working on this, therefore look at all the great things I delivered. Like, again, I have not written a single line of code that my team is writing. Like, this is all them. But you have to, be that voice. Celebrate your own wins publicly. Say like, "Hey, I'm super proud of this design system library I've been working on, and I really want to show this off." One of the things that we found a way to do to showcase this is, during our engineering, like all hands that we have, we'll let our team demo what it is that they've been working on. So even if
I
you're
think
on a
that's
different
very cool.
team, it's super cool because then I can see what other engineers on different teams are working on and see how, again, you'll start to connect the pieces of how your work is impacting their work, because it most definitely is.
And it just literally lays out, hey, toot your horn right now. Like, we're giving you the opportunity. Feel good about
Absolutely.
yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't like I one of the things I stress is like you have to celebrate your wins. You have to be comfortable with celebrating your own wins in public and not be like, "Oh, but I'm bragging all the time." Like if you're saying I'm the best at doing this, and sure, don't do that. But
Right.
you're tactically delivering something awesome, and that is worth celebrating.
Absolutely. All right. Last question. The company I currently work at does not do skip level meetings. How do I approach the company about this, and what would the value of a skip level meeting be?
So, to define a skip level meeting first, your skip is your boss's boss. It is
Hmm.
one level removed from where you are. It is common that a lot of companies don't do skip level meetings purely for the amount of time they have available, the number of engineers that are reporting to them, like within their org. But, I would start within your team. One of the things that you can see as you're making an impact within an organization is start small and let it build out that way. Start by asking for that skip level meeting. Just say, "Hey, I would love to meet with you for 30 minutes about, just to check in and give some feedback and talk about some of my hopes and dreams for the company." They want to hear from you. They actually, like, skips want to know how your manager is doing as well. And this is an easy way for them to get that feedback. But one of the things you need to do is show value, show the business value of what you're trying to change. And
Sure.
by taking that meeting first and asking for that meeting first, then you're going to be able to say, "Hey, really appreciate you doing this. I'm going to recommend to a couple other folks to also talk with you. Just want to give you a heads up because this was super valuable for me." And then you can continue to have that conversation with others and have them talk to their skip, because, if you're at a larger organization, you're going to have different skips. So I wouldn't necessarily try to do a full change across the entire organization. Start small, start within your team, show the value of a skip level meeting, and then take it from there.
Awesome. So much great advice. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise today, Kelly. We really enjoyed having you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye.